I'd like to talk a little bit about why I love memoir so much, history so much, stories that have some basis in reality, even though I really love fantasy and, kind of more fantastical fiction as well. I think that there is something so compelling and deeply moving about human stories. And it's always been a passion of mine and has really informed the decision I made to release a personal memoir as my first book, which is so exciting. History and memoir and these stories that are based in history, myths, and legends, they are stories about us as individuals, and they're stories about us as a collective group, a species, a nation, when we were talking about things like nations, when we were using that language, peoples, families, lineages. It's how we describe what it means to be here on the planet and living as humans and experiencing consciousness and so much more. It's also really fun, and I think that there is nothing more touching or compelling, truly, than history and human story. So I wanted to share today a few different ways that people have recorded stories in history and why I love them all, but also what it says about like us as people and us as individuals. And I'm going to start in a super nerdy way that is very typically me with a history written by a Byzantine princess. Her name is Anna Komnene, and she wrote a book called the Alexiad. So she was a princess, and she was the kind of second born, but would never have become empress or ruled except under very strange circumstances, and that's not how it went for her. But what she had a great interest in statesmanship and her country and her people and her own family. And what she ended up doing was writing a history that she called the Alexiad as a riff on the Iliad. And it's about her father's reign, Alexios Komnenos, who was the first emperor of his line in Constantinople. And a lot of historians read this account because she actually talks a lot about the Crusaders who came into the Second Crusade. So in England, where I live, a lot of history classes focus on Western history, which makes sense. So like England, France, Germany, and the Crusades are a big part of like a history curriculum. I'm sure that's still true today. And a lot of what we know about it comes from her. But her goal in writing this was not necessarily to give us information about these other people coming in. She says in the beginning some really interesting things about history and about her own father. And if you can bear with me, which I hope you can, I just want to use her words to describe what history is and why she's decided to write one and why she's decided to write a story about her father. So she begins the prologue of her book with time, which flies irresistibly and perpetually, sweeps up and carries away with it everything that has seen the light of day and plunges it into utter darkness, whether deeds of no significance or those that are mighty and worthy of commemoration. It brings to light that which has been obscure and shrouds from us that which has been visible. Nevertheless, the science of history is a great bulwark against this stream of time. In a way, it checks this irresistible flood. It holds in a tight grasp whatever it can seize floating on the surface and will not allow it to slip away into the depths of oblivion. I, Anna, daughter of the Emperor Alexios and the Empress Irene, born and bred in the purple, not without some acquaintance with literature, having devoted the most earnest study to the Greek language. And then she goes on about all of her super nerdy credentials. I wish to recall everything, the achievements before my father's elevation to the throne and his actions in the service of others before his coronation. I desire now by means of my writings to give an account of my father's deeds, which do not deserve to be consigned to silence nor to be swept away on the flood of time into an ocean of obscurity. So I paraphrased a little bit there, but what she's saying is that time dissolves everything. And we know this, but I think sometimes we forget because everything is preserved these days. I would struggle to think of a question that I feel like I don't know how to answer in some way or find out more information about. But she lived in an age where people were very conscious that the past was very quickly swept into obscurity and darkness, as she says. And if you think about books, even, which is, she wrote a book hoping that it would be a way of preserving information about her father's life, and she wanted to elevate him to, like, epic status. She's wrote a book that she's comparing to the Iliad, which we still read today. She, I'm sure, was conscious that books also were fragile. They could be burned and damaged and lost and would just naturally crumble away over time. So it's a really kind of heroic effort to write down a story and to combat this darkness, which we know slowly erodes everything in its wake. And there's a necessity to that, and there's a beauty to that. But I strongly feel that some of my work, the work that I've done in my own memoir and the work that I will continue to do, is about preservation, because remembrance is so important. We understand ourselves better if we remember where we come from. And it's not to say that you get stuck in the past or live in the past or over-identify with the past, but an awareness of the grand scope of the human experience, I think, is a helpful thing. It's a useful thing. I actually think it's an elevating thing. She describes it as a light in the darkness, and that's how I see it too. And it's one of the reasons I love history so much. I love her. She's one of my Anna is one of my historical and literary heroes, and it's one of the reasons I decided to not only write memoir for my own purposes, but actually to publish it, because I really see it as a light, a light in the darkness, a light in the darkness of December, which is when my story was set. And I'll juxtapose this very, like, nerdy historical reference then with, like, a personal anecdote or personal kind of look at what it's meant to preserve a moment in time, as I did in my book. I had all of my children in December in the UK, and it gets dark around 3:34, depending on where you live. In some places it gets dark even sooner than that. So it's definitely a time of darkness. I think it is for all of us in the Northern Hemisphere, but if you're really far north, as I am, you really feel this. And when I was writing about that time, I felt like I was literally shining a flashlight on this period that was very dark for so many reasons. It was dark because of the physical lack of light. It was dark also because I was really wrapped up in this very private experience. And what is the point of, like, shining a light on that and revealing it to the world? I think it makes us feel less alone, because not all of us are comfortable in the dark. I think it's pretty normal to be scared or to feel isolated, cold, alone, vulnerable in the dark. And so when someone shines a light on that experience, then you don't feel as alone. You feel like you're gathering around the hearth or a fire, or the light of a beautiful star, which is obviously also a big December theme. And December has really changed for me over the course of having my family, because I grew up with my own birthday in early December, so we had traditions where we, like, wouldn't put up the Christmas tree until after my birthday. And then when I became a mother, so one of my children is a week before Christmas, and my two daughters are just very shortly after Christmas. We just celebrate Christmas and start decorating kind of as soon as we feel like it, which is pretty early here in the UK because Thanksgiving isn't a thing. And we try to really lean into the festive feeling. And it has really transformed what can be a bleak part of the year. Even with all the Christmas time and holiday celebrations, I think there is, like, a natural darkness to this time, and a sense of overwhelm too, because we're, like, supposed to be feeling a certain way. And in our family, I think we've just, like, fully leaned into the fact that this is just about, like, almost over the top sense of fun. And it doesn't have to be materialistic. It's just about being celebratory and really seeing all the light and the growth and the joy that can exist this time of year, and finding creative ways to make it fun. It's still a work in progress because there's a lot when you have little kids. There's a lot going on in the various communities you're involved in, and so fitting in birthdays and things, I think, is going to be easier actually as they get older. But it really does feel joyful, and it's markedly different from how this time of year was when I first had my kids. And I used to joke that I like froze the baby weight off my body because our house was so cold, and I was like up feeding my babies at like 3 in the morning and stuff. And, thankfully now I get a little bit more sleep and a lot more celebration and coziness and that feeling of real warmth and togetherness, which is just so beautiful. Probably the first like biography I read really closely was for a master's I did in England. It's how I ended up here. I decided to do a master's degree after studying history in college, in university, for you Brits. And I came to Oxford. I met the man I'm now married to, and I never left, really. I had a few years kind of going back and forth, but pretty much from that point, my life was here. And as part of my master's, I really dove closely into a biography of Catherine of Siena, patron saint of Italy, and a woman who had a very interesting life that I'm not going to tell you about. I'm not going to make this video about her. I realize that it's a niche interest. But what I do think is fascinating about this biography, which is called a hagiography, because she is sainted in the Catholic Church, is that I think it tells us more about the time she lived in than it tells us about her. Obviously, it reveals details of her life, and people who really care about that look at this and her own letters as like primary sources of information about her life. But obviously, anytime someone is writing a story of someone else, like with my Byzantine princess, you're getting a gloss on what is happening that is really informed by what the goals of the person who is writing it. So in this case, it's like very obvious, kind of like Anna, that Catherine's confessor who wrote this book, his name is Raymond of Capua, had this like very clear objective to make her seem saintly and super holy and powerful, and then all kinds of other nuances that were important for how the church was dealing with women like her at the time. And so it's very obvious, I think, when we look at historical sources, because we're so far away from it, that we can see the lens or the bias, if you want to talk about it like that. But it's true in everything we write and everything we consume, even things that, I'm not even talking about politics or things like that. Any writing, even about our own families, it's so informed by what's going on. It's almost like we can't quite separate ourselves from the conditions of the planet, if you want to put it in that way. And so it's a record not only of the person the book is about, but it's a record of like that time. And it's one of the other reasons I love history and memoir so much. Is like my husband doesn't often read stuff like this, or he reads like straight history, but he doesn't like personal stories quite as much. And I think you learn almost more about a period of time reading about one person than you do about like some huge study. And that's just like my take. And then it's fun to bear that in mind when looking at some of your own preservation efforts in your own life, because not everyone has like written a memoir or cares to. But I'm sure a lot of people are like scrapbookers, and now with cameras, we're constantly taking photos and maybe making albums and stuff. And I was going through my loft and I came across this. I can't believe I've kept it. It's like magazine cuttings. It's like magazine cuttings from, I want to say, like as far back as the late 90s, early 2000s. It's mostly beauty stuff. So of course today people would just find all of this on YouTube, like beauty tutorials and stuff. But this is really like an archive of not only what was being published then. Obviously it's an archive of what's being published then. And look, I even have like a nerdy historian. I liked his biography, so I put it in there. That was fun. But it's also like an obvious record of me, like what I found pretty, what I found inspiring, which, like you try not to cringe too hard when you go back over remember stuff like this. But like what I was into and what looks I thought were cool and everything. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know that you get the same experience even with like Pinterest or something like that. There's just something so satisfying about like, I don't know, was I going to be her? I don't know. I don't know why I like that one, but I did. It's like, yeah, it's like I haven't lived this experience. This is probably like it's well over 10 years ago. Never lived this image, but I liked it at the time, and I don't know, I guess I thought it was going to play some part in my life. So this is like just how our own story intersects with like the world and what we choose to preserve of it. So like even if you're not like actively archiving things, what are you remembering? What are you like repeating over and over to yourself at the moment? In my house, it's some K-pop Demon Hunter songs because my girls have really latched onto that. But like what's like staying in the consciousness and like what does that say about the world at the moment, but also what does it say about you? Because like what's sticking? I think it's an interesting question. And when you do choose to like actually preserve stuff, not in a hoarder-like way, we can do it like in a very refined, minimalistic way, I think. I'm keeping this because it doesn't take up too much space and it's kind of hilarious and fun, and who knows, maybe my daughters will be into it. So it's not like you have to dedicate a whole room of your house to like an archival project, but I think it is fun to preserve things. And I think it's also human instinct, which is why, people get into photo albums and scrapbooking and quite frankly, Instagram. Like originally, I think that's what it was meant to be about originally. Something else that caught my eye that I thought would be fun to share is this book with, I'm just going to say, like, in my opinion, a kind of hideous cover. I would have picked a different one myself. It's an art collection from a museum, and it relates to meeting my husband in Oxford. He was studying Bohemian history. And so this is a book about art from Prague in the medieval period. So layers upon layers of nerdiness just weaving their way through our house. But I got him this for Christmas. And as I was going through what I have saved over the years, because it is good to just check in every once in a while and make sure you're not, it's not time for something to go. I came across this letter that I wrote to him, and I wanted to share it because I think what's fascinating about this for me, it's undated, so I don't know exactly when I wrote it, but I know for sure it's a pre-digital letter. And when I read it, it was really interesting to compare the way I express myself now with the way I express myself in this little scrap of paper, which, has stood the test of time. And my feeling is that this is like a real gem of me before the influence of technology, and also, of course, just like natural maturation. So this is my letter to my husband. So do forgive the creative wrapping job. Some might call it an exercise in sentimentality. Yes, I did keep a furtive scrap for myself. Others might deem it simply crap. My defense is that I couldn't bring myself to buy holiday gift wrap post-holiday, discounted though it may be. I think you may have rubbed off on me more than I can immediately recognize. Well, the one bad thing about this gift is that if my steel trap memory has rubbed off on you at all, you'll already know what it is. Oh well. Something to help you reminisce, perhaps, and to hopefully make you laugh over bizarre coincidences. I never would have noted this had it not been running in conjunction with something of particular interest to me. I think I'm referring to the fact that this exhibition was running alongside an exhibition I wanted to see. I hope you had a good holiday. I look forward to hearing about it, hopefully in person. It's so silly, Chris. I've spent 4 years dating people long distance. It seems crazy now to impose distance on a relationship where none need be, save, of course, for that distance necessary to any friendship such as ours. But I hope, I can manage it. I was looking through my library at home and doing some reading, and I came across this moment. Emma turned her head, divided between tears and smiles. Jane Austen. I think I'll soon be back on the side of smiles. All my love, Kari. So this is not, to quote another author, a heartbreaking work of staggering genius. That's not why I read it. But there's just so much mystery in here because it's undated. I kind of remember this period of my life and, dating my husband long distance. And were we just friends at this point? Were we dating? I've spent 4 years dating people long distance. I've dated other people, so long distance. So what does this refer to? It's just, and this is how like history used to be created. Like we didn't have dates and all the little, devices and ways of placing things in context. So you're just trying to make up your own context. And in some ways, I really prefer it because there's just so much mystery and charm in here. I love that I quoted Jane Austen. I haven't been reading. I haven't been reading the classics lately. I'll say that. So if I were going to write something similar now, I don't know. I don't know what would go in there. Maybe, as I said, like K-pop Demon Hunters. I don't know. But I can really remember the person I was then. I wasn't married. I was going to art exhibitions and seeing things that I enjoyed. And I was sharing that with somebody I loved who I would later marry and make a family with. And I'm just so pleased that I found this. I'm so charmed by it. Again, not because it's like the most elegantly written, beautiful piece of prose ever, but because it really stands in for something like a person I was and a time I lived through, a time we all lived through when we would be going to exhibitions like that and buying the catalog. And it's not like everything was available online. And I'm sure it may even be in the book, like I would have the physical tickets for it somewhere. These are all ways that we preserve aspects of time and of self and a place, and they're so powerful. I think it's an exercise that's really worth doing. I don't know if we live in an age that is too overburdened with clutter and, token remembrances, or we live in an age where we're too quick to like declutter and move on to the next thing. I haven't figured that out yet. I think there's like both tendencies at play, to really hold on to a lot and to overwhelm yourself with the past almost, but then also to really try to say, well, that was, especially since the last few years have been so challenging, to try to, sweep everything away and start fresh. And there has to be a balance, because ultimately, I think that telling our own stories, preserving our own stories with an awareness of the angle we're bringing to it is a real gift to the future and to the next generation. It's something that I hope I'm doing in my own work, and something that I appreciate in people who are taking such care today. And I also love, fluffy, fun fiction and fantasy too. And that's something I'm actually working on as well. But everything I write and everything I bring to the table is always informed by the past, because I think it's so powerful and so beautiful, and probably my favorite thing to read. So one of the themes in my book is how we find help in times of despair, because I found the early years of motherhood really challenging, as so many women do. And as a person who is highly capable, Capricorn rising over here, and driven and organized, I had always had the experience of being able to figure out the issues that I had, to find my way through problems and to come out on the other side, even if it took some perseverance and some trying of different things. There were times in the early years of motherhood that I felt really incapable, and I knew I needed help, and I couldn't figure out who the right people were to help me. And some of the people I thought could help me did not help me. And those stories appear in the book for sure. Not all of them, but some of them. And then on occasion, someone would appear just like an angel to help me. And purely out of nowhere. It was always such a miracle when that happened. More often than not, these were, in the beginning anyway, fleeting moments. Those are the ones that stand out more, rather than the people I had like hired to help me, or the medical protocols I tried and things like that. And one moment in particular, with my twins, my premature babies, I was pushing them in this gigantic double buggy, as we call it here in the UK, along the pavement, which is what we call sidewalk, in London. And it was kind of hard going up and down over the curbs, because it was heavy and really cumbersome. I got it secondhand for free, so I wasn't complaining, but it wasn't like a great piece of kit in some ways. And I remember I was trying to like hoist it up, and out of nowhere, I swear I didn't even see her arrive. This woman came and took the bottom of the buggy and just like lifted it up onto the curb for me. And then she just winked at me and said, "Mother of twins, it's a special calling." Like I could cry just talking about it now, how much it meant to me at that time, because I felt like no one no one got it. No one got it. And I do think that we, as mothers, we share all the essentials. Absolutely. A mother is a mother. But I also think that the nuances and the differences really matter, particularly in the early years. I mean, there's things now that I probably wouldn't even remember, but in that moment, I really needed someone with a very specific piece of knowledge about week 3 of your premature babies, and that's not something that every mother would be able to speak to, even someone really seasoned and experienced, or even someone kind of going through something similar with a single child. So I don't love stories that divide mothers against each other, because I think that most of our experience is so common, and that's where we find strength and community and come out on the other side. But I will also say that meeting a mother of twins who just, it was the just such a pure way to put it, like, mother of twins, it's a special calling. I just knew she understood the whole thing. You can see how it's still like so moving to me. I really needed it then. So I still need it now sometimes. I remember that story and I'm like, yeah, there are people out there who get it. And it doesn't take like it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much to feel seen. My memoir is not a book with a lot of advice in it per se. I think that there is so much advice aimed at mothers out there, and a lot of it is helpful. And a lot of even the helpful pieces of advice and information are maybe not relevant to you and your circumstances. The most empowering thing I think we can do for mothers is to help them access their own intuition and feel confident in what they think or suspect is going to be right for their children. And motherhood can be so challenging, in part because with the hormonal changes and the novelty of the experience, because I think most of us in the West anyway don't live very closely with new mothers all the time. So when we go through it ourselves, we don't have a lot of experience and we don't know what it's like. So it feels very novel to us. I think it makes it hard for women to trust themselves. So for that reason, I didn't want my book to feel like some sort of advice manual, or like I had uncovered these really special gems that would give specific outcomes for people with specific problems. But what I have done in the memoir is offered a path and a way for our mothers to find their way through their own particular tangle with motherhood and with childbirth and child rearing, and give them a way to both think about, because I think the mind is important. We're often told as mothers, oh, just follow your heart, your intuition. Like, I think the mental aspect is useful too. That's just that has been my experience. So I've tried to give women a way of thinking about the landscape they find themselves in, but mostly a way of understanding it and taking it in on an emotional, heart-led level, so that the experience can transform them as it does. I mean, you don't need any help from anyone else to be transformed by motherhood. That's just what it does for you. But it is useful, I think, through the power of storytelling, to know that your experience is not it's unique to you, but it's not novel and it's not strange, and it brings you into community with other women in a really powerful way. And you will be seen and you will be understood and you will be held as you navigate your own particular difficulties, understand why the challenges are arising for you the way that they are, and hopefully help you find that light that can guide you through, always just to the next right thing, the next right decision. And eventually you find yourself in a place of real beauty and with a family that feels settled. And that is one of the many prayers I have kind of infused my book with for the mothers, because I think that they need it.